Hi, this is Steve Grasso today with Grasso Global C-Suite Network. Today we'll be joined with Nubeva Corp CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, Steve Perkins. Steve, why don't you just give us a brief introduction, or you can go as long as you want, quite frankly, because I don't think a lot of people know who Nubeva is, what you guys do. So why don't you start off with giving us a little bit of background on the company and on the founders, if you will.
Sure. Okay. So first, thanks for having us on. Again, I'm Steve Perkins. I'm the CMO and head of product of Nubeva. Nubeva is a small technology innovation company. We are base our operations out of San Jose, California. We are a public company on the TSX stock exchange on the venture board. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, in a little bit. But we are a company that is focused on decryption as our core competency. And it looks like we have come up with a pretty revolutionary solution for ransomware. And I know we're going to get into that more. But you had also asked about the leadership. So the company was started by two gentlemen that I met a long time ago, Randy Cho and Greg Bannister. And they're veterans of Silicon Valley, involved in tech companies, specifically around networking and security. And so for the last 20 years, they have been, myself included, we've been creating pretty nice outcomes for venture capital and private equity firms to build technologies, bring them to market, and create value for investors and deliver valuable products to market. That's what our company is. That's kind of what we're about. We were founded 4 years ago. We are a distributed kind of next generation or modern company. We have employees all around the world, mostly developers at this point in time, been building and developing our technologies.
And this is not the old saying, this is not management's first rodeo. They've done this before. They've been with successful companies. They've been in or around very high profile companies. To the extent that you could comment on any of that, I think that will give a little more texture to the people that are just tuning in.
Sure. So Randy Cho, our CEO, was one of the original core engineers of a company called Alteon Systems back in the very beginning of the, I guess, the early 2000s, late 1999 era. They were building backbone load balancers for the internet. They ultimately got sold to Nortel for $7.8 billion. So he was part of the core team that was designing early SSL and TLS network encryption and load balancing elements for the backbone of the internet. From there, he moved on to Aruba Networks, where he was a founding engineer, and then moved up and started to get into business management, running the federal business unit. After that, he moved into his own startup and a company called Panzer that did secure cloud storage before that was a thing. Greg, similar story, started off at Redback and then moved to Aruba and then ultimately Panzer. Myself, I was at Cisco back when they had pretty much one product and moved through a number of different companies. My last role was CMO at a pretty large concern that's now owned by KKR. Then it was Blackstone. It was a company called Optiv Security. All of us met at Aruba. And as we kind of had our last exits and successes, we stopped and said, what kind of a company do we want to build now? We said, let's build a very cool leverage technology innovation company and build some cool stuff and try to solve some real world problems. And let's think out of the box a little bit in our business model. And that's kind of where we are.
So you did chat about this a little bit. You touched on it. You are a publicly traded company now, but you still view yourself as a startup. If you could just elaborate on that.
Yeah. So the founders, as we initially seeded the company, or they seeded it. I joined a couple of days after, so I don't consider myself a true founder. But the three of us really seeded the company with our own capital, and then we decided that we wanted to maintain some optionality, and we started doing some research that there were some successful businesses that had gone public on lesser stock exchanges. So different stock exchanges have different programs to incubate startup businesses. They don't have a Silicon Valley necessarily in other countries. So we ended up selecting the TSX, a Toronto Stock Exchange. They have a venture board, and we decided to go public as a startup. and it allows us to raise capital. In that operating mode that we are today, we can actually raise incremental capital very easily. We actually have very lightened regulatory controls that allows us to operate and not burden our young company with too much regulatory and compliance concerns. But at the same time, we're still accountable. So it's actually worked out quite well. And what it does is it allows us to maintain optionality, right? Wherever we go, versus the traditional Silicon Valley model, which is, you find an idea, you find your venture capital core, and they actually start injecting you into a certain execution path that's sort of the success plan that everybody follows. We could always do that, but at the same time, we have more optionality doing what we've done at this point.
So I being an advisor to the company myself, I thought it was pertinent to show who you are, what you do, where you do it, in what environments you can be successful in. Because I think, as in the marketplace, I've been a market participant for 30 years now. And you don't buy or you don't invest in things that you don't understand. So give us a little bit of background. What is the product exactly? You named it ransomware reversal. Give us a little background on what the product is and what it actually does.
Sure. So let me start here. Unfortunately, I'm assuming that everybody on this call or who's hearing this knows about ransomware. And that's because it's probably one of the largest scourges of our society today, and it's gotten really bad, and it's about to get a lot worse according to all experts. So what ransomware is malicious software that gets on and locks up your computer so that you can't have access to your data. And we've actually developed a technology that it looks like can reverse it. So when the bad guys get through all of your defenses, which seems to be happening more and more, they're getting more and more sophisticated to get through all the cybersecurity. They ultimately lock up your computer and encrypt all your files. And we have a technology that if we're in place, we can actually roll that back. We can actually reverse their encryption, meaning we can decrypt what they did to you. And that's critical because usually restoring from backups are a challenge, and the other option is paying criminals, which law enforcement is saying never, 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 never do. But business has got to get back online. And we're seeing this massive things. In fact, this week, there's been some very cataclysmic type ransomware attacks that have happened that are affecting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. So we actually can reverse it. So it looks like we have a solution to fundamentally change the landscape of ransomware. We're about to bring it to market.
So I think let's pause there, because when you say that you can reverse it, when you look at what it is that you've stumbled upon, I turn on, if you're watching any financial network, if you're watching CNBC, there's always an ad for a company that claims to have the solution to ransomware. Yeah. So tell us what they do and what you do that's different, and why your solution is really a solution.
Sure. Okay. So the companies that you hear advertising typically solutions to ransomware are cybersecurity companies. The cybersecurity industry is all about either trying to block things from getting in, or about 5+ years ago, the cybersecurity industry realized that it could not block everything. So it also had to get very good at detecting and responding to stuff that gets through. And there's a lot of companies out there that are saying that they can do this. And I think there's two things that I want to make sure everybody understands. Organizations need to continue to invest in state-of-the-art cybersecurity. Absolutely need to do that. But what seems to be happening is that these things can only block and stop 90%, 95%. And that's assuming that a company can afford, or an organization can afford, to buy all of these technical solutions and implement them and maintain them at a current state. And that's what's being exposed in the country, is two things. One is that these technologies aren't perfect. And even if they were perfect, not everybody can afford them and not everybody has them. So the weak underbelly has been exposed, right? And stuff is just getting through. And so it's not that those technologies aren't good, and not that they can't block most ransomware, but we're finding that some stuff still finds its way through. And that's because in a large enterprise, think of a large bank, think of a large insurance company, a large manufacturing company, there are so many different variations to their technology footprint. There's always a crack, there's always a hole. And unfortunately, ransomware has become a multi-billion-dollar industry, illicit, illegal industry. It's a growth industry. So we're seeing an explosion of people trying every variation you possibly could get through to find a way through, the cracks. Let me give can I give an analogy to kind of maybe anchor all this? Okay. So let's just take your house. I'm going to put you on the spot, but your house, you've got a bunch of rooms and you need stuff in those rooms to do your day-to-day life. And let's assume that you have built and bought a state-of-the-art alarm system. So you're wandering around in your house, and you know what? Even with the state-of-the-art alarm system, there's a way into your house. There's a way into your house that they don't get caught. So they find a way through, and while you're in your house, maybe when you went away to dinner, they run around and they put a little lock on every one of your doors. And they basically, to every doorknob, they put a little combination lock. And what they're doing then is they take all those combinations, put it in a little safe, and leave it on your doorstep and say, if you want into your rooms, you got to pay me money. And so because of that landscape, stuff's just getting through. And the cybersecurity industry doesn't seem to have an answer. Every time they come up with an answer, they change, et cetera.
Right.
Now, you asked me a second part of that question. Let me answer. What is it that we do different? We as a company are not trying to detect ransomware. I mean, at the core of all of this, let me give you an analogy. Remember, they're running around putting combination locks on all of your doors. Imagine we have a little camera that's looking at doorknobs. And we actually see, hey, I see you putting a combination lock. We're experts at detecting locking. So I see somebody putting a lock on your door. Why don't I spy on them and see what they're doing so that I can reverse it? And that's why we're very different. We're not trying to detect criminals. We're not trying to figure out who's a bad guy or a good guy in your house. I'm just saying, if somebody tries to put a combination lock on your your kitchen door, I'll see it happening, and I'll actually steal the combination that they're using, and I'll help you go and get into your room once they left the house. Does that make? Did I explain that well?
You explained it perfectly. And I think the other thing, just as a follow-up, so you touched on this in the beginning of the question. What the other companies do is they just tell you when one of these events happened. And they're big on insurance, correct? That's the way their case study is, where they'll see it happen, and if they can't stop it, then they'll just cover whatever insurance aspect or whatever monetary past hands. But the truth is, they're not your competition. You could actually help them, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So let me cover that a little bit further. So the primary companies that are out there right now advertising that they can stop ransomware. What those technologies are called is endpoint detection and response systems. And what they are is software that runs on your computer, and they're looking for changes on your computer and behavioral anomalies in software. And so what they're all about is detecting strange stuff and then notifying somebody so that you can respond. The problem is that ransomware is so sneaky, they're going undetected at least long enough to start locking up your data. So to give you an idea, that industry, their goal is to try to detect something maybe inside of a minute. But within a minute, if ransomware starts executing, they've actually already locked up most of your good data. And it's so fast and so scary. So the $1 million insurance policy is nice, but when you see people getting ransomed for $100 million, or in the case of the Kronos ransoming that just happened, like everybody's time card systems are down around the world, and hundreds of millions of people can't get paid paychecks. We're back to manual time card keeping. That's beyond the $1 million insurance policy that somebody else offers you as part of a sales promotion. So where we fit in is we're the safety net. We're actually like insurance. We're like the last stop. We're your disaster recovery safety net behind that. When stuff gets through, we're actually sitting there and saying, yeah, I can reverse it.
How did you, two questions. Are you the only ones, and there might be some redundancy and overlap in some of these questions, so bear with me. Are you the only one, the only company that is actually doing this type of decryption, this type of protection against ransomware? And how did you stumble upon it? A little more specific on that, because this wasn't an area that you were focused on. You weren't focused on solving the issue of ransomware. You were focused on your core competency that led you to this idea of, oh my gosh, we can actually cure something that is on the headline of every financial paper at least once a week.
Yeah, so let me answer that maybe in reverse, because the first question kind of gets into, well, let me start here. We don't know of anybody else, any other commercial or legitimate company is doing what we're doing. And in fact, as we've started engaging in discussions with many cybersecurity companies about licensing our technology, OEMing it, their eyes light up and say, wow, this is a pretty innovative approach. So we don't know of anybody who's doing this. And we came at it because, again, with a very different approach, because we're really not a security company who's trying to figure out how to detect ransomware or malicious software. We're a decryption company. So let me now kind of get to your second question first. So our business as a whole is, I mentioned in the beginning, we are a decryption technology company. And our mainstay product, or the main product that we've been marketing for the last year and a half, is a set of technologies for decrypting network traffic, right? All the traffic running around the internet is encrypted, also in data centers and in private networks. Yet corporate security and application developers, they actually need to monitor and look at what's inside the traffic streams to protect you or to make sure your applications are working right. The truth is kind of what's on the wire, and it's getting increasingly hard to decrypt that. So we built this innovative decryption technology that can decrypt network traffic. And we've been selling that to some large companies, OEMing that, and was our primary business model. It's kind of a fun story. So one of them said, okay, so you can decrypt all of this SSL or TLS network traffic. Yeah. And then they came and said, well, can you do this SMB traffic, which is what Microsoft uses for all their file sharing, right? Corporate file sharing. And we said, probably. Why? We could adapt the technology. They said, well, because ransomware is killing us. There's a new version of that, and ransomware is running around all through all the file sharing systems and all the Microsoft connectivity, and we can't see it. And we're hoping that if you could decrypt it, we could see it better. And so we started thinking, and our CTO came out of his labs and he said, I did some tinkering, and I think we could adapt our technology directly to ransomware. Instead of trying to at least inspect the traffic and figure out if it's around, why don't we just go straight to it and decrypt the ransomware itself? So as we looked at the problem, we didn't look at it and say, yes, you have a malware or a malicious software problem. We looked at it and said, ultimately, with ransomware, you have a decryption problem. Right? So you have stuff that's encrypted that you need decrypted. And right now, the only way to do that without us is to pay bad guys a lot of money and set yourself up like you're paying ransom, right? So that's how we came upon this. And what just completing the story is, so then we built that core software and sort of, it was sort of like our CTO coming out of the lab and saying, with a light bulb and saying, I've got it to work. Look at this. And our jaws dropped and said, oh my God. And it was sort of like we've invented a vaccine. And we're said, okay, this is huge. And so we started investing in it and really redirecting resources from our core business because we thought this was such an important investment. And the more we invested, the more we tested, the more it's been showing efficacy and effectiveness relative to ransomware. And here we are, the products now, well, we'll talk about it, but our products on the doorstep.
To kind of break that down a little bit, I have a couple areas I want to go on this, but can you prove that it works? Because a lot of this stuff, we hear a lot of different companies, and they're not being nefarious when they're talking about what their solutions are, but we're not hearing the total story about it. And to less tech savvy people, is there a way to prove that your ransomware reversal actually works?
Yeah, well, there's 3 stages of proof, I suppose you could think about it. The first is the testing that we perform. So right now we are starting to do, we're in the final phases. You could think of it as like stage 2 clinical trials, right? We're now regularly testing on a weekly basis our beta version of the software against ransomware variants that we're pulling blindly off of the internet. So for example, the report I got this Monday after weekend testing was out of the last 90 days, if we looked at all the attacks that were reported, and we pulled down samples that we could find and we tested, we could recover 95%, actually 96.5% of those. And that's before we've done, broader based bug stomping and tuning of our stuff. So just coming out of the labs. And this is of stuff seen or unseen. Now, that's the first level of proof. The second level of proof is that we've actually now put this in the hands of independent third parties. And they've tested thousands of samples and found the same kind of results. Now, the ultimate truth is that we need to get this product and release it to market, which we're about to do, and put it in the hands of customers. And the ultimate proof is, can I save a business? And it's a rather interesting double-edged sword. Of course, I want that to happen, but I don't want it to happen. So that'll be the ultimate proof. We do see that a number of people that now is the aha moment is when a third party takes our software and just pulls down a random piece of ransomware that they found on many different places in the internet or from law enforcement, and they run it and it just works. And the light bulb goes off and says, oh my gosh. So this is like, a flu vaccine, and I can solve flus I've never seen before.
So then to back up a little bit, your normal suite of products, your decryption area, you marketed it towards a certain amount of corporations or companies, and now this must open up a huge array of different corporations. This is sort of a question where it's probably easier for me to ask you who wouldn't be a prospective client of yours versus who could you market it towards, because I have to assume it's government, it's telecoms, it's sort of everybody, every space, every sector is susceptible to a ransomware attack. So in theory, they could be your clients. Am I overstating that?
Not at all. Not at all. Although we are not focused on consumer at this point. So this is a business solution. It does require some level of competence from a security or an IT professional to implement and run. We do plan to, over time, engage with a lot of service providers who maybe can reach down, but we're not built to do consumer level support or consumer level marketing, certainly at this time. It's certainly an option that we could have later. But yes, and in fact, I'll tell you, this is one of the horrific things about ransomware. It's attacking every industry. And they're now starting to create industry-specific attacks. I mean, banks have been a target. And, it's interesting because banks have really sophisticated security technology and infrastructure. And so do a lot of other extremely large companies. They can afford multi-million dollar security, compound complex security programs. Well, we certainly apply to them, and we're engaged in some early conversation with some of them. The next tier down is where the weak underbelly starts, all the way down to a small little hospital or a school library, right? I mean, or your local city, organizations that can't afford all the best state-of-the-art security, again, to implement, let alone maintain and operate. So yeah, it's everybody, Steve. It's pretty spectacular. And so our channels to market, actually, if you think about it, we're a technology innovation company. It changes the way we think about how are we going to take this to market. Are we going to try to build our own sales and distribution organization? Or are we going to make this available to every sales and distribution organization? OEM, yes. Service providers, yes. Direct to customers through cloud marketplaces, absolutely. Our view again is there is a really serious disease out in the world, and if we can help tamp it down, we have to blow this out and get it into as many hands as fast as possible to make a dent in the problem. We'll make money along the way, but equally we'll make a difference.
So I think it's interesting because there really is no competition. There's just potential joint ventures that you can do, and it's just a pretty sweet spot to be in. That all of the cyber security stocks that are out there, that people that are watching this know about, have invested in, or have heard their cures for this, you could actually collaborate with them and be an overlay or an underlay, depending on how you look at it, to whatever they have that's existing right now. So, and correct me if I'm wrong there. And the other layer of this comment is, when will you be able to go to market? What's the go to market strategy? When will this product be available? Is it still in beta? How is the testing going? And when can we actually see it be utilized by some corporations?
Okay, so let me break I think you threw two questions at me there. If you don't mind, I'll break them down. So the first one is on competition. I think you nailed it. Our competition is actually the ransomware, because their product is pay me a bunch of Bitcoin and I'll reverse the ransoming. I'll decrypt your files. That's their product. And of course, then they'll do it to you again if they could get away with it once. But so we do the exact same product, but without paying a ransom. We have a very low cost fee for you to implement our software across individual systems around inside your computer environments, et cetera. And then when you get hit, there's no charge. You simply recover. So that's the first part. And so we actually view that the cybersecurity industry is again important and necessary, and we're their backup. We're like a backstop to them. Same thing with the backup and storage industry. Everybody needs backup and backups and cloud mirroring and things like that, and cloud drives. But that stuff takes a long time to recover. And actually, I should cover this. The ransomware actually is even corrupting backups. They're creating a data gap so that you have to pay the ransom. So that stuff takes, according to Gartner, that takes 23 days on average to recover from a backup. So we're complementary to both. We found a niche that ransomware is exposed that's between stuff getting through and backups not being available or viable, to how do I just get my business back online? Or just my computer online if you're an individual, right? The CEO, right? So that kind of be the landscape of what our competition is. And as a result, we see that both the security industry, who's trying to solve this problem, and the storage industry, they represent partners. They represent licensee potentials for us. If you were one of those listening to this call, call us. We would gladly license your technology to get it to market faster through your touch points and in all your customer base, because we have to shut this down fast. And so the analogy is that if I have a vaccine, should I try to go and build out all the clinics around the world to try to inject you, or do I just go to all the people who already have those footprints? And the answer is both, right? I mean, I'll offer it direct. If you can do it yourself, I'll offer it through OEM relationships, et cetera. So that's if you think at the highest level strategy of our go-to-market. And then if you get into saying, well, where are we in that execution? So this month we started, well, actually we announced this, we pre-announced this about 60 days ago, and started telling people we could do this, and our world just kind of has changed. We can't respond enough to all the interest. We started doing limited evaluations about a month ago, and now we're doing broad-based private demonstrations and evaluations. We don't just put it out there for anybody to get. We need to protect this IP. We don't want the bad guys to get it, right? So we are creating, that's happening now, and we expect to be shipping product and taking orders in January. We actually have some people lining up saying, well, let me go now, and it's like, well, wait. So we expect to deliver a minimum viable product in January and start taking orders, and then the product will mature and off we go.
Is it a subscription based? Is it a monthly? Is it a one price for a software product? How does it work? What is the team?
Yeah, very simple. So think of the number of computers in your environment, in your organization, and that's endpoints like laptops, desktops, as well as servers in your mission critical applications and data centers. Count them all up, and we're initially introducing this thing at a couple dollars a month each. It goes, there's some discounts for volume, but yeah, so you're looking at $24 a year protection on that computer, which is less than your antivirus. Again, this is a design. We view this in many ways like a technical insurance product. It's a fire and forget technology, by the way. You implement it once, you never think about it afterwards until things are bad. It's not something you have to maintain after that. It's not something that's self-updating, self-healing. You just implement it, fire and forget, and then on game day, if something's bad, you actually call us up and we walk you through how to use that technology to recover.
So I'm going to ask you something outside of your wheelhouse. So you're totally fine to say no comment on this. But as far as the stock itself, where it's listed, are you planning? Does the company want to get to a NASDAQ listing, to a different exchange? Have you heard anything? To the extent that you could comment on that, I don't want to put you in an uncomfortable spot.
Here's what I can comment. Obviously, I can't comment directly on our financial plans that are not disclosed. We always want to maintain optionality. We believe that this company has the potential. I mean, the TAM for what I just described to you is extremely large. There's certainly a scenario where we outgrow the TSX-V.
Got it.
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that. I don't want you to opine too much on it. So right now, I like to always keep these to about 30 minutes, just to keep the intensity and the interest alive. Is there anything, Steve, that I left out that you think is important for the viewers to hear or understand? And of course, they can always go to Nubeva's website to get a little more information there as well. But is there anything, while we have a captive audience here, that you think is worthy of touching on?
Yeah. So, well, first, if you go to our website, Nubeva, NUBEVA.com, there's a little red button in the upper right-hand corner. If you click on it, it takes you to a page that's really just describes this initiative. There's not, well, and up there are video demonstrations of the technology and work and a small little presentation to just give you an orientation. And if you're interested, fill out that form and say, I want to be kept apprised, right? Or I'm interested in buying, or I'm interested in partnering. Please go there if you show interest. I would just say, maybe summarizing, Steve, ransomware, according to all experts, including the cybersecurity insurance industry, is the #1 issue. And one could say it's one of the top 10 issues facing our society. All indications are it's going to get much worse next year. The reports are coming out from law enforcement and everybody else. You need to invest in security. You need to invest in backups, but we're the ultimate backup plan. We are your safety net, your ransomware safety net. We can reverse ransomware. The solution's coming out. It's simple and easy. And if that interests you, we'd love to have you give us a look.
Perfect. Why don't we leave it there? This is Steve Grasso with Grasso Global C-Suite Network. Steve Perkins from Nubeva, CMO of Nubeva Corp. Steve, thanks so much for joining, and we look forward to being kept up on your progress and your initiatives going forward.
Thanks, Stephen. Happy holidays.
Same to you.